Welcome to another episode of the Untitled Chapter podcast. Thanks for joining us today, Lester.
Thank you.
So today we want to talk a little bit about homelessness and the link between homelessness and drug-related deaths. So government statistics have revealed that there's at least 300,000 homeless people in the UK, and apparently that is set to rise 14% within the year. So it's obviously a huge growing issue. Now, according to these government statistics, by reducing homelessness by just 25%, say just 25%, that's obviously a massive number, you could potentially save 160 lives lost to opioids every year. So they've made some connection here. So we want to know a little bit about your thoughts on that. But Lester, if you could help shed us some light on this issue, what are the immediate changes that are needed by addiction services, by governments, or even, I think more importantly, by individuals to better support either those experiencing homelessness themselves or other people supporting them? And what are your thoughts and perspectives as somebody who's worked in the field of addiction as to why we're seeing such a rapidly growing problem in homelessness?
Well, mate, that's what makes it always a little bit like doing these sort of topics. Is one, I'm not an expert in it because it's just so many reasons for, again, I like using that term, the perfect storm. It's like,
Yeah.
I do believe the perfect storm, been saying it back in the past, that there's a lot of conditions that are coming together to create a perfect storm. So it's like, I don't think there is a thing, and I don't think there's an easy way of saying it. All I can do, I'm no expert, and I haven't got all the answers. I can just give an opinion, that I worked quite a few years of homeless charities. And again, even like homeless, it's like, what does that mean?
Mm.
When people say homeless, you sort of think of like people living out on the street, but there's
Yeah, like in a
sort of
tent or on some cardboard.
yeah, but homeless also, I think the more common definition these days is, you could be somebody that just sleeps on other people's couches. You don't actually sleep on the street, or you're
Mm.
put up in a temporary accommodation that you haven't actually got a
It's more that you
home
haven't
yet.
got a registered address as opposed to actually not having
Yeah,
a
well,
roof
more
over
like
your
no
head.
fixed abode, but even then, that could sort of mean that people may go to the extreme of living on the street, which so again, out of that number, when it's talking about homelessness, this is what makes it hard. It's like you kind of want to clarify, what are we actually talking about? Are we
Hmm.
talking about the people living on the street? Are we talking about the people that are sofa surfing? Or are we talking about the people in uh, emergency accommodation? Because and again, as we're drug addicts are concerned and alcoholics, they're going to be across them three categories in quite large numbers.
Mm.
And so again, it makes it hard to give any real definite answer. Not that I've got all of the answers. It's I've experienced very small amount of, I've spent over my life, where I've had to sort of spent a week sleeping in a train station and days here and there sleeping out. Mostly, I've always been blessed enough to spend quite a long period staying people's letting me rent or staying there on their couch or spare rooms, that kind of thing. So I've spent quite a long time being homeless in that sense in my life. I've never been eligible for social housing because I've never been that screwed up, and white privilege kind of goes against you when you're a male when it comes to social housing. Yeah, very little chance of getting a council flat unless you're in a very desperate situation. And so again, it's like when you're talking about the housing is one thing, and then the addiction's another thing, and then, but I guess, starting from the question of why would more people die of alcoholism and drug addiction
Mm.
because of homelessness, Well, I guess that would be kind of a bit of an obvious again, as a lot of the people with drug and alcohol problems that live on the street obviously are going to have a lot shorter life expectancy because it takes quite a toll on your body, especially in winter and things like that. They're not always aware of cold or situations. And again, it's like, what are they dying of? I
Mm.
need. Is it overdose? I think we've got lots of rises in the alcohol deaths. That 25%. I think no, 33% rise in this year of people dying of alcohol. But again, digging a bit deeper, it was because of liver disease. Now, how many of them were homeless or considered homeless? Did they die because they were homeless, or did they die of liver disease while they were homeless? Is it more? Is this talking more about opiate overdose? That more people are overdosing?
Yeah, I mean, according to this report, reducing homelessness could save over 160 lives lost to opiates a year. So it's suggesting
So
that,
it is more opiates.
yeah, exactly, opiates, and homelessness. I mean, is this like a chicken and egg situation? Are people more likely to be homeless because they've abused opiates, or
Well,
does that come as a way? It's
that's kind of like one of them questions that you do ask a lot, or well, I ask a lot with people when they're in treatment, because I do notice that, like, on the news and stuff like that, when they ask people, why are you homeless?
Mhm.
And they always give some story of, oh, my wife left me, mum, I lost my house. And then it's exactly like you say, then it's like the chicken and the egg. Did your wife leave you because you were just perfectly well behaved and perfectly normal behaviour and doing good until that point, and then you just descended into alcoholism? And I don't think that's often the case. I think it's usually that, my wife left because I was drinking. You're not drinking because your wife left, or
Mhm.
husband, or whatever. You get the point. And again, after 33 years of working in addiction and treatment, I think 9 times out of 10 it's the other way round, that your wife left, that you're having severe problems because of your drinking or your drug taking. Not you're not taking drugs because you're homeless. You're homeless because you're taking drugs. Not for, and again, not for everybody. Again, it's everybody's there for different reasons. But if we're talking about the ones that are there on drugs, I don't think they become homeless and started taking drugs. I think most of them are homeless because they're taking drugs.
Mm.
Which again is kind of funny, because I was looking at the shelter website this morning, and this is one of the things that again probably makes me sound like not a nice person, and I think I might be considered antisocial, because it's like they seem to think that what's going to solve the housing crisis, it seems to me, when from the view that I'm looking at it, and I'm sure it would solve it stop people being homeless. But on the shelters website, it's, we need to build 1 million new homes for the government, which again is the taxpayer. So the taxpayer needs to fork out for 1 million new homes. I know it's a lot more complicated than this, and this has been a decline over times, and it always comes down to the same sort of economics: the rich and the poor. You know, how do we navigate this? And but there, it seems to me, and have a look and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to think if we sort of build 1 million new homes at the taxpayer's expense, and me growing up on a council estate, I grew up on a council estate. My parents never had savings. I don't think either of my parents, probably now they're older, but certainly when we were children and growing up, there was never any savings in any bank account anywhere. There may be a few coins in a jar that we'd have to hunt out, pull all the betting slips and screws and nails and peanuts to find a few pence to go and get milk. I'm not sort of talking as a rich person. I'm talking someone that pretty much grew up pretty poor on a council estate. You know, we wouldn't have known we were poor, but there was no bank accounts with savings in. There's no pension pots or, you know, stuff like that. Most of the money that my family earned paid the bills, and we had to earn it the next month or we didn't have any money. And, you know, I come from a broken home. My mum left home when I was about 10 years old. You know, so I come from a very low place, I believe, in society. Um, you know, my family were a working family that they went to work, and even if we signed on, it was just a way of getting extra cash. You usually signed on just because it was like free money. You still had a job. You just went and signed on because that's what everyone did. But pretty much, you know, most of my life, I've had to earn a living. So sort of coming from that place, I forgot after going into that. Oh, so shelter. So what they're saying is what I think. What I'm reading is if we can get the government to build 1 million new homes, and then if we can give them to the homeless people, which probably, you know, again from my experience of growing up, if you wasn't in a pretty desperate situation, I'm not having a go at people in a desperate situation, but I'm just saying that what are we talking about here in the real world? You're talking about the government building 1 million new homes that's going to cost hundreds of millions of pounds. And again, they can be loads of arguments. Well, we give the money to Crane, we give it here, we get... Yeah, I get all that. There's no easy answer here. I'm just kind of like breaking it down in the way my head works. And then we give these homes to these people that haven't got homes. We're probably going to have to pay the rent. We're probably going to have to pay the bills, supply the food, supply the drugs, supply everything. And we're going to have to not have any conditions on tenancies. So you can do what you like, when you like, with who you like, and no one can kick you out. And if we do that, then I'm pretty sure we'll have at least 1 million less homeless people. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure the drug deaths that are caused by people living in such chaotic conditions may possibly go down. One part of me is like, well, I doubt it, because if you give that much freedom to people, I mean, the thing when you do work with homeless people, they're usually very chaotic, obviously, but I think, again, they were chaotic before they become homeless, but becoming homeless is a whole other level of, you know, danger, because you know, just out there on the street in the cold. Again, I think that can work for some people and work against some people. You know, some people that are stuck in homes. You know, I've worked with people that are declined into alcoholism, and they had a wife that left. They lost their job in the post office, and when you turn up at their house, they're living in complete chaos. Like the whole house is trashed. There's the toilets full of poop, the bath full of poop, buckets full of poop. You know, things are leaking, things are breaking. You know, there's rubbish everywhere, food all over the place.
Effectively, you know, homeless, but just with a roof over your head.
Mate, honestly, and in a very bad shape. And you find quite a lot of people like that are sort of, they got somewhere to live. And this guy, you know, he was had quite a good job, quite a good life before he descended to that point. And over the years, he called me the Grim Reaper, because I'd sort of say, mate, you're going to lose your job next. And then, you know, he worked at the post office, so he would turn up in the most appalling condition. But, you know, it took him a long time before they actually fired him. You know, years. He was on full pay, for years, drinking himself to death and turning up every now and then in a terrible state. I mean, I dropped him off once. He's had one sock on. He had that alcoholic hairdo where it's like gelled up one side like a flock of seagulls was sick. You know, his shirt was about 4 buttons out. You know, his flies were open. He had no underwear on, so you could see his knob. And, you know, his fingers were like yellow down to the knuckle. And his teeth were terrible state. And, you know, I dropped him off outside the post office. He hid his cans of special brew, drunk the last one shaking, and went in. And I think they would send him home, but they would. So you kind of get them guys that are in homes, but in a terribly dangerous state. I mean, I used to go to the local drug authorities at the time and say, look, this guy needs help. And they would say, well, he misses appointments and he don't turn up for his appointments. So I went and picked him up and took him in there and said, what day is it? He didn't know what day it was. Literally, he didn't know what day or month it was. He knew what year it was. And but I said to him, I said, mate, it's like, you know, you're going to end up living under a bridge. And he was like, oh, I couldn't live under a bridge. I couldn't live under a bridge. But eventually, obviously, he ended up getting evicted for his mortgage. Couldn't pay his mortgage. Once the post office finally dismissed him and cut his income off, he wasn't capable of sorting anything else out, and he couldn't get anywhere for anyone else to really help him. And again, I think the best you could have done was kind of help him stay in the house and help him stay drunk until he died. I mean, he used to set fire to the house quite regularly. You know, he'd read a lot of newspapers and they'd be all around his bed. He was like sleeping in the middle of a bonfire, and, you know, quite often he'd fall asleep with a cigarette and wake up on fire.
Bloody hell.
And stuff like that, and then leave the front door open. People would come in and take advantage of him. And once I turned up, he'd had all his teeth kicked in where someone had beat him up, and then eventually he ended up losing his house and ended up living under a bridge. That's what he called me, the Grim Reaper, because that's kind of where I could see where he was headed, because that's the path that people with that problem go down. And but the truth is, he adapted, and he said he actually felt better under the bridge than he did in his house, because he blamed the council tax for his downfall. He said it was the council tax that caused all this misery in his life. It was obviously the drinking, but he see it as the council tax. And so when he was actually under the bridge and going to all the homeless support, he absolved all responsibility for himself, and all he had to do was sit there drinking all day without any pressure. And he actually said this is the best he felt in years. He would just go to the day centre, get his food. In the summer, you know, he'd like to sleep out. He could just sit and drink and smoke, and as long as there was a street light, he could read or something. Or he'd go and get a shower in the day centre, and in the winter he'd go in the night shelter. And he actually seemed more. He said he was more happy. So he was there for like on the street for a few years, and then eventually they put him in a flat. And I asked them in the day centre, because I'd stopped working there, how is this guy? And they said, oh, he's fine, he's doing well, we got him a flat, he's living in a flat. And a little while after, I see him walking down the high street, punching himself in the face while he was walking along, talking to himself. But I picked him up, went back to his flat, and it looked very much like his house. It was a death trap. That I thought, how long are they going to let him stay here? And so again, it's like, look, I'm not saying there's not success stories, but the truth is like, I've seen a lot of people that are homeless just put in homes, and then you realise there's a reason why they're homeless. Again, there may be different reasons, but that's the reason why they're homeless. There's a reason for it. And unless we actually find out what the reason is, giving them a home isn't going to solve the problem. There's a reason why people are drug addicts, and if we don't discover the reason and resolve it, then they're going to continue to be drug addicts. So, because there's more homeless people, is there going to be more homeless deaths? Oh, I should say absolutely, because I think, the people that are homeless, probably, if you say this is a section of society, then they probably have a higher overdose rate, suicide rate, accident rate, arrest rate, hypothermia rate. I should think definitely them people are going to be more vulnerable and more at risk of death. But again, it's very difficult for me to think that how can we just build 1 million homes and pay for people to live in them? I don't know whether the world's changing and it's causing something very different to happen. I mean, one of the things, again, listening more about I kind of know about addiction more, but I wanted to sort of learn a bit more about where we're at with the homelessness. So I listened to a few podcasts and, housing lawyers and things like that. But again, the one thing that I think's missing, because I'd say this, spend the price of a house on personal development on them 200,000 people, and I think we'd save 160 lives. And I think them 160 people would develop away from being on the edge of death. I don't think spending all that money putting people in houses it's not really the philosophy that I've followed through my career. I think I worked on helping to empower people. And I empowered someone this year, and now they're spent a life of most of it in jail, most of it getting benefits, but now they're self-supporting fully. They're working, they're paying their own rent, they're paying their own bills, they're completely off all benefits. And so that saved about $2,000 a month for the taxpayer. That just took probably a couple of years of, mentoring, spending time encouraging them, teaching them, showing them. And so I think if we take that hours money and spend it on developing them people, I think that would be a better way of saving 160 lives. I think we'd save more lives than that, if I'm honest. But sticking them in houses is just ain't going to solve the problem. It's not going to stop.
Need to give people the tools to be able to get their own houses and accommodation. And like we see with a lot of these addiction recovery stories, those people that do find a way out, they want to pass that knowledge on. They feel like they've kind of made it. They're proud of themselves. They're going to help the next person. It's going to have a positive knock-on effect.
Yeah, but it seems like this, mate, and I don't know what this problem's all about. I had a good, ended up listening to some podcasts on Marxism this morning because it's like, because I think they're talking about Marxism and socialist, and it's like, look, I'm not that well educated, so I'm not sure I've got a complete grip on it, but I do notice that naturally, and again from my own life and my own experience, that just giving people stuff is not usually benefiting them. So I've spent my life, I've spent my philosophy and my life based on my own experience. And again, it's not for everyone, I understand that, but I've done pretty well in helping a lot of people by empowering them. Even used to get a lot of the services that we work with that would refer people into our rehab quite often, and I'm not exaggerating, quite often the key workers and support workers in them services would phone me up and say, look, the people coming back from your rehab are different. Not different from when they left, but different from people coming back from other rehabs. And I say, what do you mean? And they say, well, the people coming back from your rehabs, it's noticeable how they want to get on. They start doing our groups. It's like, because again, I think when you understand the condition of the human brain and you work on developing it, it empowers people. And so what I see was then them people that did come from that system where they were given housing, given money, given drugs, given this, given that, given this. And I'm not saying it probably helped keep them alive to a degree as well. Don't get me wrong. It's like, you know, it's not black and white. None of this is black and white. You know, that level of enabling probably did help keep them alive, but it also helped them, you know, kept them alive while they were getting worse. And so they would say, you know, that the people are more empowered. So the people that we see getting empowered in their brains, what I call recovery and crossing the bridge, that they would generally then start going into the community, getting training, getting their own homes, getting their own deposits, you know, going through the normal process. And I've seen countless of them people get back to contributing members of society. So, you know, for me, you know, when I feel like I most succeeded in helping an individual was when they started paying tax. When they started to be self-supporting.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's kind of what I've been all my life. But when I listen to things like shelter, it's honestly, have a look, and it might be me, but again, I think is something wrong with me, because it's like, I'm sure there is something wrong with me. I can answer that question before any of you start shouting at the. But honestly, it seems like there's just not one word of personal responsibility. It's like, look, it's the fault of the government. It's the fault of the landlord. Some of these podcasts you're listening to from these homeless charities, honestly, it's like landlords are evil people, you know. And then when you start looking at the Marxist idea, because it's almost like that everything should be owned by the state, all the rents should be super cheap, and it's like the government's responsibility to house everybody. And look, mate, I'm definitely more of a capitalist. I've learned enough about myself over the years to realise that I honestly believe the way out is to work hard, to work smart, get educated, because that's kind of what I've done. And it's worked, and I watch other people to do that, and it's like, look, again, I'm paying stupid tax in what I believe is a stupid country. They're overtaxing everybody. They're over sanctioning and over controlling and over regulating. It's absurd how difficult it is to get on in this country. And again, because it's kind of like that, it's like, well, what do you expect landlords to do? Because what they were kind of saying is it's that what's causing the homelessness is this, you know, no fault eviction, which is like, but how many of them no fault evictions are actually no fault evictions? What landlord is throwing out perfectly good tenants that are paying their rent, accepting the increases on their rent because they're like, well, the rent shouldn't be increasing? It's like, I'm having to pay £1,000 a month extra for my bills than I was paying 2 years ago because of the rising costs. My mortgage went up 600 quid. All my other bills have gone up 400 quid. I'm having to find £1,000 a month. if I was a landlord, I should protect people from that by covering the cost myself. I understand there's dodgy landlords, but there's also economics at work here. So they should have, what they're saying is they should have these council houses built by the taxpayer and then subsidised by the taxpayer. So that these people that, again, some of them may be hard-working, decent, low-end people, possibly, but a lot of them ain't. A lot of them are on benefits. I mean, it's like 51% people are on benefits of one kind or another, all these top-ups and subsidies. And I mean, society's got a lot of problems because that's just creating a lot of debt. And the more debt, the more problems are in, which is what we're always facing. It's like, you know, when you're a hard-working taxpayer and you keep getting pulled down and having to pay all this money out to bail everyone else out all the time and then pay back all the debts because they ain't paying the debts back. I am. Where are they getting the money from? It's like they seem to have these ideas where it's like the government's just got all this money and it needs to buy all these out, build all these houses, look after everybody, fill in all the blanks on their life. And look, man, look, I know I sound like right-wing conservative, and I probably am. I don't know. I'm just off a council estate myself. I just worked hard and just think, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me. And again, I don't think there is an answer. It's like the war on drugs. They go, oh, it's never been won. It's like it's never going to be won. You know, we keep saying this. It's never going to be solved. We just need to keep fighting the battle because that's what keeps it down. And again, through my life, it's like, you know, I feel bereaved because on one hand I feel bereaved because Maggie Thatcher sold all the council houses. Now, I was the generation that was meant to get them houses. Now, my mum and dad had a council house because they were before the time that, you know, they were just a low-end family, new family that got a nice house. And they bought it very cheaply. And I thought, man, that's not fair. It's like they've pulled the ladder up on us because they were supposed to take that money and build new houses, which that kind of never happened. For whatever reason. Again, there's probably loads of reasons. But then, you know, so I was then denied social housing. I had to always rent a room. Again, people hate HMO. They're like, oh, HMO's terrible. It's just rich people getting rich. So we can't have HMOs. Which again, it's like, it's bottom end housing. It's like it gets a house and breaks it into rooms and then they rent the rooms to people that haven't got a lot of money. But you end up obviously with people that are low end and a lot of them have problems. Which is possibly like we're saying why they're at the low end. I've seen the low end people go high end when they got rid of their problems, started studying, started developing, started working, started getting... People generally do better. I don't think there's anybody in society stopping you earning more money. I think, what's stopping you being a billionaire? There ain't no one coming around your house stopping you doing it. It's probably because you ain't smart enough, Matt.
You'll see.
You know what? Prove me wrong, mate. It makes me happy when people prove me wrong. But there's nobody stopping you. If you had an idea and you worked hard and started coming up with a problem, solving a problem that people were willing to give you money, you could be a billionaire. No one's stopping you being a billionaire. You just got to work harder. You want to work smarter, come up with an idea. You know, it's like... So I don't see them barriers in society. It's hard, and I do see there's lots of barriers that are very difficult, and they make it harder. But again, it's like, do we lower the bar and make it easier for people? And then become weakest nation, which I think is happening to us. I think we're becoming a weaker nation because there's less expected of us. I think COVID's kind of thrown up the fact that most of us are a bit lazy and we don't want to go to work. and we like being at home, not involved in the rat race. If somebody can give me the money, I mean, I wouldn't be happy with that. I'm just not happy with people giving me money. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm happy if people want to give me money, I'll take it, but not as a lifestyle. And again, I realise that some people have got mental health problems and other issues, but it doesn't mean they can't develop out of that. You know, we've seen, you know, I kind of tell people like, look, all Stephen Hawkins could do was kind of like wink a bit and lick his tongue a bit, but you know, he's a very rich man. He got married a couple of times. He wrote books, made documentaries. You know, he had very little movement. So, you know, using him as a model of inspiration, you've got a hell of a lot more than he had, and he done fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think personally for me, mate, if they're going to go down by what Shelter are saying and get the taxpayer to build millions of homes, I think there's better ways of spending the money. I think you prevent a lot more deaths if you spend that money on treatment and personal development and support. That's a lot of money, and
What
I think
might
you
that
get a
look
better
like?
return.
Do you think that would be like treatment centres, like places people can go? Or do you think it would be more schooling, education, start it younger, social
Well, again, mate,
workers?
I think social seems to be. Again, I started to think this morning I'm anti-social because anything that starts with social, I feel like I'm a bit anti. Like social this, social that. It's like, I don't know. It just all seems a little bit. Again, what I'm learning, it all just seems a little bit socialist, communist, Marxist. And again, I just don't think them societies actually. I mean, I think we do enough of that in our society. I think we're badly organised in lots of ways, but you know, getting free healthcare, I'm all for that. But again, I think it just gets so much taken advantage of and abused that it's very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And and so, you know, I don't think there is, like I was saying, I don't think there is a solution. It's I've had the same solution for the last 30 years. Is that we need strong interventions on people. We need to invest a lot in really good interventions. That does include, you know, I don't think we should give up the war on drugs. I think we need to redefine it. I think we need to modernise the war on drugs. And I don't think we should become more punitive. I think we should become more more interventions, you know, sort of putting more pressure on people to take interventions and to go to treatment.
Like not
You
necessarily
know,
just locking people up and or finding them, but actually giving them some deeper education, perhaps mandatory, but something that is a plan out, not just a punishment, but an actual
yes, yeah. So
like a
even
life plan.
yeah, so even again, I feel the same with people that have been on the dole. It's like, you know, letting people that are nothing wrong with them that be on the dole, even if they've got depression, anxiety. You know, asking them to come for some further education and development. At least when they've you know, the worst thing you can do with somebody is nothing, because they don't develop. And you know, you meet a lot of people and they're like, oh, you know, I'm broke because of the Illuminati, and it's like, mate, you ain't got the education of a 14-year-old. You've got zero life skills. You've got literally nothing to offer. Your personal hygiene's barely decent. You can't look after your teeth. You know, it's like, you know, you're very underdeveloped considering, you know, the level of development that you need to get. It's a similar thing with sort of immigration, isn't it? If you let people we're a very developed country, believe it or not. So if you let very underdeveloped people in, they're not going to be able to reach a level of employment that's going to allow them to pay for their own bills. So then that's going to bring more of a burden on society. So again, we need to improve everybody's condition. As a country, as a community, we need to say, look, how can we improve your condition? But just giving you a house, that is going to improve your condition, but it's not necessarily going to improve your condition in a long term, and you're probably going to slide back. Because again, there's a reason a lot of these people haven't got homes. And if we give you a home, you're not going to be able to look after it, or it's going to become a massive burden to the state. And again, there's just not infinite money that you can spend on people. So again, for me, it's all, how can we say, look, and people go, well, I've got the right to use drugs. It's like, well, yeah, you have. But does that mean then I should give you the right to pay for you to come into A&E all the time? Why is it you're using drugs and I'm paying all the bills? Why is it you're sitting there watching telly all day and I'm paying all your bills? Because, again, it's like a right. They've got a right. Well, I'm going to tell my mortgage company that I've got a right to have homes. I'm not paying you no more.
Mm.
And that ain't as simple as that. But, again, in my life and my life experience, that most of the people that I've met with them problems are very underdeveloped people. They're not equipped. And I think it's more loving to equip them than to just keep leaving them and supporting them in that unequipped place. And so I think doing great assessments on people, I believe in assessments, because again, that's kind of what I learned from my 12-step program to do. We call it inventory, but it's really just an assessment. It's like, let's look at what the problem is. And when we stop living in the problem and stop creating the problem and start living in the solution, the problem usually goes away. And so again, it's not I wouldn't push one thing on all people, except let's see what the problem really is here.
Mm.
You need $2,000 a month to live in this country, but you're not trained or educated in anything. How can we get you to that level that you can... And there is stuff like that. And again, I do believe that's the good intention behind, like, what they call a top-up for people. They give people top-up loans and money. Even if they're working, they kind of top it up. But do you know what that benefit is?
No.
This is because you work, mate.
Yeah, never had any benefits.
Don't understand the system.
No.
But they I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head in a minute. But even if you're working, they say, you need to earn a certain amount of money, so you get a top-up.
Mm.
And then people go, oh, well, it's unfair, even if you're working, you're getting a top-up. But also, I know a lot of people that they don't want to work anymore because they seem to be happy existing at doing that little bit of work and then having their top-up. But again, that's taxpayers' money. So again, it's like, I feel like they want me to live in a communist state by paying for everybody, and they feel like I want them to live in a communist state or a dictatorship by saying no. I think you've got to make people realise that you need a certain level of ability, and if you're below that ability, we need to know why, and we need to solve them problems, and again on an individual basis. It's almost like, do you think they're saying that, like our government's saying now, and I agree with them, that, look, we can't have all these people having sick notes because they got anxiety and they feel depressed and all the rest of it. But then the campaigners come out, oh, that's disgusting, all the depressed people, all the people. I mean, it's like, so you're telling me 100% of them people are honestly ill. You're telling me that 100% of the people getting benefits are honestly ill.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's just not true. I mean, look, man, I grew up, I know loads of people on benefits. And they do me nothing, most of them. It's like they're just scroungers. Not saying everybody is. I'm not saying everybody is, but don't tell me no one is. We've got to do honest assessments with people. I don't know if the government are capable of that, personally. But again, I feel that's kind of what I've learned as a 12-stepper that's helped change my life, and I've helped change thousands of other people's lives by saying, look, we need to do an honest assessment, and you can't keep blaming everybody else. Let's acknowledge where the world and people are wrong, but I don't think that's your problem. I think your problem is you. And see, so it's very hard for me to sort of come from that place of total irresponsibility and doing really bad and being sort of homeless, criminal, on drugs and alcohol, and be very irresponsible with my life and very underdeveloped. I couldn't read and write when I was 25 years old. And I'd be like, oh, I've got dyslexia. But I never made any effort. I started to make effort at 25 to get educated. It's painful reading for me. It's still painful reading for me. But I started learning. I try and learn every day, even now. I'm 58. I try to learn. I learned this morning. I thought, I think I can learn a little bit more about Marxism. I hear it a lot. I want to know what's Marxism. It's very interesting. Frustrates the hell out of me listening to a lot of it. I wanted to learn a little bit more about homelessness, so I had a look at it. And again, I know what I'm saying. Obviously, shelter does not have one shred of people need to take some responsibility. And again, that's just so against what I believe. Now, again, I don't want to impose, whipping people, but certain pressures need to be put on people if they're going to develop. And society hates it because they're like, well, who's going to decide who it is? And that, well, I will if you want. You get a couple of people with the intention of helping someone and say, look, we just need to do an honest inventory. Because again, my life experiences with thousands of people, that when they take honest inventory, and I'm talking about homeless, drug addict, criminal, prostitutes, mental health, people with big mental health problems, disabled people. We've worked with all of them people, black, white, gay, straight, transgender, all of them. But when they took honest inventory and see what the problems were that they had control over, all of their situations improve. So I'd like to see a society that says, come on, we're in this together, but you've got to pull your weight, mate. We can't have you sitting down. It ain't good for you. It's kind of like mental physiotherapy. If you've ever had to go to physiotherapy, it ain't comfortable. But if you don't get and start walking, you probably ain't going to walk again. It's painful. It's exhausting. It's frustrating. It makes you angry. And don't worry, we're with you. We're here to support you. We want you to succeed. My solution is everybody needs to be more successful in society. And the more successful you become, the happier you feel. People go, well, I'm super successful. I'm not happy. It's like, well, there's other areas you need to develop in, mate. Maybe not material ones, maybe mental and emotional areas. And I'm not saying there's not a host of like mental problems, emotional problems. I'm just saying I've worked with thousands of people of the worst problems that when they took responsibility and did good inventory and started working on the problems with support, their problems and their lives improved massively to the point where local services would phone me up and say, what is it you're doing? And say, mate, we're just helping to work on their brain. We're just trying to teach them to take some responsibility. Look, it's in our, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, but give me the courage to change the things I can. We're just trying to give them the courage to change the things, to tell them that, look, Stop getting caught up in trying to get stuff from everybody else all the time. See what you can bring to the party. See, you evolve then, you increase, you develop, you grow, and you can do more. And the more you give, the more you get back on every level of humanity. When I give more to my wife, I get more back. When I give more to children, I get more back. When I give more to my home, it looks better. When I look after my car, it looks better. When I give more to my career, when I give more to my education, I'm having to constantly learn things that are driving me nuts. It's painful learning for me. I've got dyslexia. It's like I've got loads of issues. But I don't give up. And I keep thinking, what's the problem? And I say that to other people, like, what's the problem? No, what's the problem? Right, what's the solution? No, what's the solution? No, we've already talked about the problem. Why do you want to keep talking about the problem? The problem ain't the problem. It's the fact you're not applying the solution is the problem. So you might not understand the solution. I didn't. I was ill-equipped. I grew up in an ill-equipped household to deal with problems. I had to learn them from other people. I had to learn them from therapy, 7 years of therapy. I had to learn from doing countless workshops, countless groups, being accountable to people, humbling myself enough to tell people I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to have a healthy relationship. Man, relationships are hard with other people. I've got so many, issues of resentment and judgment, and all coming out of a low self-esteem and a fear of rejection. I'm an abandoned child. I was abandoned by one of my parents. My mother abandoned me at 10 years old. It causes problems. I've had problems, mate. And the solution I found is I took personal responsibility for my own personal development. And then I went and asked people to help me. And I learned to shut my mouth while they were trying to help me. And I took direction. And I got up when I didn't want to get up. And I went to work when I felt full of anxiety. I went to work when I felt depressed. And again, look, I'm not trying to shame or guilt anyone. I'm just saying I just don't give in easy. There's days I stayed at home because I felt fearful. There was years when I was depressed. And that was a time when I felt most closest to being homeless at the beginning of my recovery, year 3 to 5. When I returned to England, I felt really depressed, really alone, and I spent a period of time living on somebody's sofa in Brighton in an almost derelict building, eating in soup kitchens. But again, it was like I'd more than that. And again, even that is an example for me, mate. It's like I felt so depressed. It's like something shut off in me, and I had ability. Again, I'm kind of blessed that my dad was a builder, so he made me work. So I kind of always liked fixing things. I fixed cars and stuff. So I always had the ability to work, and that's been a blessing. So I've always been able to earn money. Mostly never had any savings till I got older, but I could always earn money, mostly in the margins. And I worked on building sites that never had scaffolding, the page of cash. I spent most of my life getting cash. Always in the margins, but always being able to really pay my bills and feed myself most of the time. But this period when I come back from Canada and come back to England, I just felt so depressed, and it's like something switched off in me, and I lost my ability, and I felt I was really struggling around my friends, really struggling around my family. Mad as a box of frogs and aggressive. I mean, I was 3 years in recovery, mate. I'm off me nut. And feeling like suicidal, just terrible. And again, I had a friend in Brighton, and his dad left him a house. It was a bit sort of like a derelict builder, really. He was eating food from like the throwaway stuff from Chinatown. It was like terrible. I couldn't even eat it. I had to go to the soup kitchen. I've never been in a soup kitchen, and again, certain things happened. It was like I thought, why am I here? How have I fallen this low for all these nets? And it was really depression. And so I understand, but you know, I went into this soup kitchen one day and I just felt so low. And like, how did I end up here? You know, I've got more ability than this. And like, I was basically homeless. And I went into this soup kitchen, and this homeless guy come up, and I just burst into tears as I walked in. I was just so at the end of myself and so sort of shocked of how have I sunk so low. I always thought I was better than that, if I'd be honest. And this guy come up and he went 50p cigarette. And him doing that act of care, it just switched something in my head. And I thought, I got to go and do something. But it was a recession at the time, so it was very hard to find work. I thought, I'm going to go back to Watford. I'm going to find some work. Because again, I couldn't find any work because there was a recession at the time. It was in the 90s, 93, round about then. And I went to the Dole office, said, you know, I've just come back from Canada. They're like, oh, we can't help you. And I'm like, well, I'm English. I was living there illegally. They're like, we can't help you. And there was this whole string of reasons why I wasn't eligible to get any dole money. So I said, what am I supposed to do then? There's no work. You're not going to give me anything. I'm going to have to start stealing again. You know, I was also trying to be honest then. I've become an honest person. And, sorry, I'm banging on the desk again. This is banging on the desk talk. And the woman said, she went, well, you can lie on your forms. I said, I'm not lying on my forms. She said, well, you ain't going to get no money then. I said, I'm the only person in here being honest. You ain't going to give me any money. I said, what am I going to do? She went, well, there's a soup kitchen around the corner. Go there. I mean, I was lucky enough that I was sleeping on my family's couch in their spare rooms and that kind of thing. And but again, I was mental and driving them all nuts. And they were driving me nuts. And so I went round this soup kitchen, and there was these, it was like this Christian organisation that set up these 2 coaches, and they were dishing out soup in these coaches. And I remember thinking, I didn't think I'm going to go there. This is the way my head thought. I thought, I ain't going to go there to get soup. I'm going to go there to help. I want to, if you let me help, then I'll take soup. I don't want nothing for nothing. I'm an abandoned child. Part of that is I don't need any help. Even though I was screaming I do need help. But I'll do work and then I'll accept some soup. But I ain't just going to take your soup for nothing. So don't... Anyway, I just burst into tears as I walked into there. And this nun come over called Sister Loretta, lovely lady, and she started praying on me, which felt really weird. And she said, what's wrong? And I told her, I said, I'm a carpenter really. I'm a builder. I can't find any work and I can't get any money, and I don't feel comfortable just taking this chariot off everybody. And because again, I'm not able to work. And she said, oh, around the corner we're building a new soup kitchen. She said you can go round there and volunteer. And so I went round there, and it was a timber frame building, which was my speciality. And the guy, Steve, who was the project manager, I said, here, mate, I said, do you need any help? He said, what'd you do? I said, oh, I'm a carpenter. I said, I'm actually good at timber frame. He said, oh, thank God for that. He said, because these Christians, they just importing all these kids to come on these projects to build this project. He said, none of them know what they're doing. I said, no, I'm a proper builder. So he let me start working on there, and then I'd start having their sandwiches and their soup. And you know, the lady running it would often go, why are them other people round the corner not coming round to help? You know, the homeless people, they were all around there just wanting the free soup. That's all they wanted. They didn't want to help. They just wanted free soup, sandwiches, clothes, anything for nothing is kind of what they wanted. They didn't want to come and help. And so in the end, they decided they needed to pay me because I was a professional and was doing a good job. So they started paying me. And then I went to the, someone said, have you tried that Prince's Trust? They did, because I was a sort of ex-criminal, you know, troubled person, and they said it's down the Winter Centre, and I found out where the Winter Centre was, so I went down to Prince's Trust thinking that I could get a loan and get some tools and get a car and get myself going and get doing little jobs for people. And so I went down the Winter Centre. Again, I only wanted to borrow the money. I couldn't be given it, if you know what I mean. It just too much pride for that, I think. And I went to the Winter Centre, and the guy, he said, well, can we help you? I said, well, I heard about the Prince's Trust, but I'm not sure what it is. But so he gave me this pamphlet, and it said who it was to help. And as I read the pamphlet of who they wanted to help, it was me. It was like somebody, even now I want to cry. It was like somebody could see me. And I just burst into tears. Again, that bit of care. And it sort of, he said, can I help you? I said, no, I don't need nothing. I can work my way up. I'm going to work. And so I went to an AA meeting that night, and someone said, oh, there's this job in Chalfont where building these hoardings, but you're going to need, you know, a belt, hammer, saw, electric saw, or you need your own extension lead and a level to build these hoardings, which is the things outside building sites. You know, that wood is quite easy for a carpenter to build. But I didn't have any of that, and so I said, oh, I really like that job, I ain't got any of that. But this old boy called John, Scottish John they called him, he was like the old tramp of Pinner. But he was in the, he used to go to the meetings, and he turned up next day round my house. He nicked out of his son's shed a skill saw and a lead and a belt and all the bits that I needed. God, makes me want to cry again. And so I turned up at this job, and they give me this job building these hoardings on this estate. The first pay packet, I bought myself a little £300, I think it was a Maestro, had a big boot on it. The floor was rusted out, so you had to be careful your legs didn't go through to the road, but I could get tools in the back. They had a roof rack, I could get a ladder on, and from there I just started working my way up. Again, I had them abilities, my emotional life collapsed, that took all them abilities away, but with encouragement and help and of the good people that helped me and supported me, I managed to just keep working my way up, and I'm still working my way up. It's not easy. It's not easy. And so, for me, that's the solution in society. What I just said there, that's kind of what I believe in, and that's what I try to help other people do. And again, I feel I've been quite successful in. So, you know, with the worst kind of drug addicts, the worst kind of lost person, the worst kind of screwed up person, not, you know, I don't think everybody, but I think if for the cost of 100 houses, I mean, I'd even get them building the houses. It's like, fair enough, let's build 100 houses, but if we're going to give them to these people, the condition is they got to help build it. Because at the end of it,
learn a lot of skills.
They can have some skills. And hopefully some of them are going to go, oh, I can earn £2,000 a week being a carpenter. I mean, the money they're earning at the minute, I mean, it's like apprenticeships and stuff like that. So I like that side of stuff. apparently that makes me a right-wing conservative, then so be it. But I've just kind of got a practical way of looking at things because it's worked for me and it's worked for other people that we help. And that's what I do. That's what I still do.
Yeah.
That's what I did recently with that other lad. It's what I love doing. I'm often giving people tools. I say, mate, look, come work with me. I can't pay you a lot, but if you want to come work with me, I'll teach you some stuff and I'll give you some tools. Whether they go and sell the tools for drugs or not, but that don't often happen. Usually people get on when you encourage them. It can take a bit of time, and that's the interventions. And I think society could do a lot more to do better interventions, but I just don't seem like the government ever do meaningful ones. Or, you know, I think the difference is that we need to do things more as a community and say, look, as a community, we need to help each other be successful. We need to raise our communities up, because if we go too low, we create poverty and that spreads.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not a good thing. It's just not a good thing. And it becomes very expensive because we have to build 100 houses at the cost of money we haven't got, then pay all the bills for people to go in them to save 160 lives. That's a bad investment. Not saying I don't want to save 160 lives, but I think we could save a lot more lives for a lot less money, and it'd be a lot deeper and a lot more meaningful. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does. And your story is a great analogy, I think. The idea that you don't necessarily want to just put a plaster on something. And people do need help, they do need support, but it has to come from a more like community focused place. It's not like you're looking up at this government thinking you should fix my problems. You still need help. People do need support, but it can't be. It's not just like a one thing fixes it. Like the house, for example. You need these simple acts of kindness from people that you can relate to, like Scott. What's his name? Scottish John, and the nice nun lady who helped you out. They're individual acts of kindness that happen.
Well, thousands of people, mate. I'm not a self-made man by any stretch of the imagination. There's been so many people helping me out and still help me out. Without them, I couldn't do it. But again, this is why I don't like it always being the government. It infuriates me that it's always what the government can do. It's like, I'd rather do it without the government. Let them keep the roads running and, the electric on and the water. But apart from that, stop looking at the government to fix stuff. They're not going to fix it. They're not going to fix it. The communities need to fix it.
Yeah.
But we're shattered because we're all looking at the government all the time. And that's what I've learned from being in AA and fellowship and going to church and being part of fellowship, because there's a lot of resources that I can contribute to but also enjoy.
And I think
which is what a healthy society should be.
Totally. And I think a lot of people forget, they disassociate this idea of like the government spending money and the tax you give them. Like, I don't know what it is, but people kind
money.
of, it is. We pay the taxes. Like that money that
they think it's like the government's money. It's not their money. It's our money.
There does seem to be this weird dissociation there when you speak to people. They're like, oh, I don't want to pay taxes. I'm paying tax too much. But then they're like, oh, but then all the government services are shit. And it's like, well, it's the same money. It's our money.
I think that's the dependency, because in America they would probably more majority, at least 50% of them, think more like I'm talking now, because I think our country very much fosters dependency on every level on the government. And I think America is more about independence, which again I think they become independent from us. They didn't like, and they become more freer in lots of ways. Look, they got their problems, don't get me wrong, we all know that. I'm not saying there's a perfect system, but, and again, I don't think there is a perfect system. I think that's one of the problems that I think we need to understand or agree on, is like, look, there is no perfect system, and we're not going to fix all of the problems. The best we can hope for is a massive improvement for the majority of the people, and then hopefully then people will help improve the people at the bottom. So it's like, I think at the minute it seems like again, I'm not an economist and I'm not the most educated person, but it's like, it always comes down to the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, which I agree. But you need them like the middle classes. You need the people in the middle to make sure that they're taking a decent amount from the people at the top, but also then making sure the people at the bottom are getting a decent amount. But more opportunities than just giving people stuff. I just really don't think it does you any good just being given stuff, especially when you're not able to do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Again, I kind of feel that I'm not a slave, and so I'm not going to go and ask the government. If anything, if I want to tell them, leave me alone. You're too much in my affairs. You're making life very difficult. You're making it hard for me to earn a living. Back off. If I was in charge, I think I would get rid of half the laws, half the regulations, and double the size of the police force to make sure that the rules that we're left with are enforced. Because I think regulations are causing trouble, and unenforced regulations are causing trouble because the honest people, it becomes a burden to them. The dishonest people, it sort of gives them a extra foot up because they don't have all the burden of the regulations and laws, and they don't enforce them in the lower end, and they should, because it should be an evener playing field to give people opportunities, because ultimately it comes down to who's got the advantage, and often people with the advantage take advantage, and the disadvantaged don't get a chance. But often the disadvantaged are disadvantaged because even if they got the opportunity, they wouldn't be able to take it because they're not resourced or skilled enough.
Mm.
And so by increasing their abilities should increase their opportunity. That's where a lot of these people are coming to our country, because of the opportunities that are available that aren't being taken by a lot of people in the country because they're not equipped. We need to equip people better from the bottom to the top. I think we've got to aim for making everybody successful, not just a few. And again, I like it when I am a conservative, but not to this government, but that, hard-working people should be rewarded for their hard work.
Mm.
I like that. And people that absolutely are unable should be given an incredibly decent standard of living by the rest of us. But them that are able shouldn't be.
Mm.
But that's something that's controversial.
Yeah, well, the whole topic is difficult, and there's always going to be. It's a bit like the harm minimization versus recovery, isn't there? There's always going to be pretty drastic views either side for fixing the same problem. So it's just going to be interesting to see how it develops over time, and if we can do more podcasts like this and get people talking, I think it's only going to be a positive thing, isn't it?
Well, again, it's like all I can realise, mate, is that, again, I only know from my experience what I've seen.
Yeah.
And the people that want to do better infantry, better assessments, and face and look for the problems in their life honestly and try and solve them, they do well.
Yeah.
That's my experience, and that's kind of my job to teach and show people that. It's kind of, I love Rehabs UK, like doing the assessments and getting people the help that's best for them, and the development that's best for them. And I'm hoping at some point we'll be able to do more development to help people do more personal development. I don't think there's anywhere near enough. I think a lot of people think they need therapy, and I'm nothing against therapy, but I think in my experience a lot of people just are not equipped. They're just not equipped, and so they need equipping. They're not able to be successful because they haven't got the necessary abilities to do that. And so I really enjoy personal development with people, with saying, look, let's look at what's going on for you, and let's see what your problems are, and let's see what you need to succeed and what support you're going to need, and help you to do that. and I'm pretty sure that as you become more successful in your business, in your career, as a father, as a mother, as a whatever you are, that's going to bring a lot more joy to your life.
Mm-hmm.
But life's difficult, and you have to learn that as well. You have to learn to also, make mistakes. You have to learn to fail quick, learn from it, and develop. And that's one thing I don't see the government doing. They just don't seem to be learning from their mistakes. They just keep going around and around and around. And it's like, we're spending a lot of money on creating this. We need to be learning from our mistakes. And it's like, it doesn't seem like you are. In actual fact, it seems like you're making things worse. It's totally try and resist to think conspiracy, but it's getting harder. It's almost like the solutions to all of our problems. Trouble is, it doesn't benefit everybody. Yet it seems to me like nearly everybody in England's on benefits of one kind or another. Even people in employment, it's all about the benefits, and no one can afford it. But yet we all think we should be having the best of everything. Where's the money coming from? Who's paying for all of this? I don't know. Seems like I am. I feel like I am. I want to pay less tax. I think we could do a lot better. I think we can increase production.
Yeah.
And that should do better for all of us. But keep borrowing all the time. I mean, this country's like we're living on a credit card that's maxed out, paying top interest, and we're never going to get out of it. It just ain't, and it's just don't make no sense to me, mate. But there you go. It's the long conversations,
Yeah.
but I think that's all I've got to say on that.
Yeah.
That's my penny's worth. Not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's the angle that I tend to come from, and that's my solution to some people that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Let's develop everybody. Let's use that money to develop people, and they find their own way.
No, brilliant. I appreciate that, Lester. And it's one of those topics that it just opens up so many other rabbit holes that we could go down, but we'll try and stop there, and we can maybe save some other topics for another time, because we'll be doing many more of these. So I appreciate your perspective on that, and
cool.
we'll get that out to people as soon as possible, and some good insight.
Cheers,
Thank
mate.
you. Thank you.
God bless.
Bye bye.